Welcome, football fans, far and wide, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. More specifically, the NFL Offensive Props Show. That is right. I'm your host, the DGen Doc, and today is a special day. Recording this on the 6th of August. We are about 30 days out from NFL kickoff, and it is time we kick off our series here with NFL division previews, looking at the best bets, the 4 best player prop bets for each division. And today we are talking about none other than the NFC South. That is right. We're going to talk about, I'm going to lay out 4 of my favorite bets for this division. The NFC South, the division that is pretty wide open at this point. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers won it last year. Atlanta Falcons coming to the season with some new off-season additions. They're coming in as the favorite right now. But it's a division that's pretty wide open. There's no clear-cut favorite. You got 4 teams that all realistically have a shot at the division. So I think this makes it a fun division, and it's one that we can go ahead and make some cash on, folks. So again, we are 30 days out from NFL kickoff. Cheers to you. Let's talk some football. I'm going to start off with my first bet of the day, and we're going to head over to Carolina to talk about a rookie. And that is right, the rookie running back there in Jonathon Brooks, their second-round pick out of the University of Texas here. Now, unfortunately, rookie running backs, we talk about getting back into the speed of things, really adjusting to the speed of the NFL, and that is when they're healthy. And unfortunately, Jonathon Brooks is not healthy right now, which is why I'm going to take him as under 4.5 rushing touchdowns at -110. That is the bet, and here is why. So we talked about he tore his ACL at the University of Texas, later in the year in November, to the point where he's only going to have 10 months of recovery time from point of injury until week 1. ACL tear your anterior cruciate ligament, major stabilizing ligament in the knee. When you fully tear it, requires season-ending surgery like he had, and about expected 10 to 12-month recovery timeline. Now, want to be closer to, obviously, that 12-month mark where guys can start getting back onto the field. Research does show, however, just because they're back on the field does not mean they're 100% or close to where they were pre-injury. In fact, research shows that typically it can take up to 2 years for guys to feel like they're moving normal again, back to their pre-injury levels. We see they see this all the time, especially in running backs. Breece Hall actually just said himself he finally feels healthy this offseason, 2 years off his ACL. So you got a rookie running back coming in with an ACL tear, right? So he's already starting on the pup in this situation where, at least in training camp, he's not getting those reps that you would need. And ACL, as much as it is a physical injury to come back from, it is also a mental injury. You have to relearn how to walk. You have to relearn how to trust your knee. The last time that Jonathon Brooks made a real cut, his knee gave out on him. He tore his ACL, right? So there's that mental aspect. And the last thing you want to do, especially as a rookie running back, is be thinking too much when you're in the backfield. And I think it's going to be hard for Jonathon Brooks and really anybody, especially a rookie running back coming off an ACL tear, to come in and immediately be the guy and get back to what he was doing at Texas. Now, I do want to say, this is not a condemnation or, anything bad on Jonathon Brooks for his career and his future potential outlook and things like that. I do think that Jonathon Brooks will be one of the best running backs in this draft class. What he did at the University of Texas, in his 1 year, he was able to prove some things. He looked really dynamic. I just don't want to be betting on him on that year 1 after the ACL. Now, not only is it the injury concerns, he's also went to a bad team in the Carolina Panthers. In fact, this team was so bad that they only had 7 rushing touchdowns all season last year. 7 rushing touchdowns all season. That is incredibly bad. I do not think that a guy who's not going to come in and immediately be the RB1 is going to get over that 4.5 mark. You also have some competition here. You've got, Miles Sanders kind of falling off, but Chuba Hubbard, he had over 230 carries last year. He was kind of their workhorse, right around 1,000 yards rushing. He was their workhorse. He was able to carry the load for them. I do not expect the Panthers to just kind of toss those guys to the side. I think, Dave Canales has said week 1 is pretty unrealistic for the running back, maybe week 3, week 4. But I think even week 3, week 4, he comes back and is very limited. I would not expect him to be getting a lot of carries until closer to the midseason mark or after. And again, that's if he's fully healthy, if he's looking good, and that's if all of a sudden they decide to just go with Jonathon Brooks as being their only running back number 1. I personally like Chuba Hubbard in fantasy. I think he's someone who's being undervalued. I understand that Jonathon Brooks may be a better running back than Chuba Hubbard when fully healthy, but that's not the case. That's not the situation we're dealing with. So give me Jonathan Brooks under 4.5 rushing touchdowns at minus 110. We're now heading over to New Orleans, down to NOLA there. And we are talking about another rookie, but on the other side of the ball. And I'm talking about cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry. Again, I'm going to be fading a rookie here and give me his under 1.5 receptions at plus 110. So we're still getting a little bit of plus money here for the rookie quarterback. Now, I know what you're thinking because it's initially what I thought. When I saw this bet on the board, I was like, oh, that's an easy over, right? You're talking about Kool-Aid McKinstry, a guy who's been a top elite level cornerback for really going on 3 seasons now at the University of Alabama. I would expect, rookie cornerback, 2 interceptions should be good. They target him, whatever. Well, Kool-Aid McKinstry, in his 3 years at the University of Alabama, playing teams like Mercer and Northwest, East West, Chicago University, right? He only had 2 career interceptions in his 3 years at the University of Alabama as a starter. Now, look, Kool-Aid McKinstry is one of the better cornerbacks of this draft. He's a great prospect. He may be a great player, but he's just not that ball-hawking type of cornerback. We didn't see it at the college level, so there's no reason to believe he's just going to come into the NFL and rack up the interceptions. Now, not only is it against his play style, is it against his history, but he's not even a listed starter right now on the New Orleans Saints depth chart. They have 2 of the better cornerbacks in the league, not just in the division, in Paulson Adebo and Marshawn Lattimore. He's going to be really hard to get above either of those guys. And then really, maybe he's going to be fighting for some time in the slot against another good cornerback in Alontae Taylor. But right now, his first step is to actually see meaningful snaps on the playing field, right? Never know if it's an injury situation or maybe he just beats these guys out in camps. But I think that's going to take some time as far as the rookie cornerbacks don't always come in and do swell, right? So he may struggle, again, with that game speed. I don't expect him to be a day 1 starter. That's not how things are looking in camp. And then another thing, again, more importantly, 2 career interceptions in 3 seasons at the University of Alabama. Give me the under on cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry, under 1.5 interceptions at plus 110. I think we're getting a really good value there for that pick. All right. We are halfway through 2 out of the 4 best bets. And before we move on, I want to tell you about some of the awesome things we have going on over here at IDP Plus. So first, this weekend, actually, coming up is the Fantasy Football Expo over in Canton, Ohio. I know you're probably already psyched, got your tickets, but if you needed another reason to come out, or if you're going and want to hang out with us, join us on Saturday, August 10th at the Brew Kettle at the Pro Football Hall of Fame for a drafting extravaganza. For the first time ever, IDP Plus is hosting an IDP League. So be a part of history. Check that out in the link in the show description. Go hang out with the guys over there. Fortunately, I will not be heading out to Fantasy Expo this year, but I know it's going to be a great time. So go ahead and draft. I know if you're listening to this, you're probably an IDP nerd like us. We just talked about defensive prop. So draft with those guys. Speaking of draft, it is draft season. It is prime off season. Again, we got 1 month until the season kicks off. Let me tell you about my friends over at Trophy Smack. Trophy Smack has gorgeous draft boards complete with player stickers so deep you couldn't possibly need them all. And for the first time, Trophy Smack has an IDP expansion pack. Look, we understand there's a select few people who love football in its entirety, offense, defense, special teams. We understand that if you love defense, that means you love real football. Trophy Smack gets us. So check out that link in the show notes in the show description. And then finally, we have an IDP Plus rookie guide breaking down all the rookies coming in on the defensive side of the ball. Plus. So all of the rookies coming in this year, figuring out, hey, how should I use them? Where should I be taking the guys in the draft? It's comprehensive, and it is only $9.99 over at idpplus.com. All right, folks, let's get back to the action. And we are coming in with bet number 3. We're staying in New Orleans, and we're talking about none other than the alpha dog himself in that wide receiver room, Mr. Chris Olave. Give me his over. Finally taking over on the show here. His over 1,025.5 receiving yards for the season. Now, may seem like a high number as far as got to get over 1,000 yards. Not something that's been a struggle for Chris Olave in his career so far. young career, but he's hit this number in his first 2 seasons pretty handily. And, my biggest point for why I really like this bet is who else is New Orleans going to be throwing the ball to right now? I, I don't understand, in my head, there's no way that he doesn't get to this number. So Alvin Kamara is probably their best other threat out of the backfield. He's going to take away a couple targets, some targets, but again, I can't see him really having a huge amount of target share. You've got Chris Olave as the number 1 dynamic wide receiver, and then you got Rashid Shaheed, A.T. Perry, and potentially Juwan Johnson, Taysom Hill, one of those combinations, right? Again, Kamara, we can make an argument for. Yeah, he's a dynamic player. He's a threat out of the backfield. But what other wide receiver is Derek Carr going to go to? Chris Olave was targeted an astounding 138 times last season. 138 times. That was 52 more targets than any other Saint last season. And last season they had Michael Thomas, who's, I'm not a huge fan of at this point in his career, but people would argue he might be better than Rashid Shaheed. He's probably better than A.T. Perry at this point. So, I don't see any way where the Saints have any success at all on offense unless they are feeding Chris Olave the ball. He's a dynamic wide receiver. I think he's worked himself up into, squarely the top 10, 15 wide receivers in the league. So I love Chris Olave here to be hitting the over 1,025.5 receiving yards. I think Derek Carr is just going to feed him early and often. All right, folks, the last bet on the card, the last bet of the day, and we are heading down to sunny Tampa Bay. And surprise, surprise, we are taking another under, folks. We're going with not a rookie, not a young guy who's been around for a couple years here. Wide receiver Chris Godwin, under 4.5 receiving touchdowns. Do have to pay a little juice here at minus 135. Now, 3 unders on the card. Don't be so surprised there, right? Because when you just think about this real quick, I'll hit on this. When you're taking these player props, you do have to take into considerations any type of injury or, any type of benching, this or that, right? There's a lot more kind of worst case scenarios than best case scenarios, specifically with the injury thing that we can't, it's really hard to predict injuries, right? So that does get baked in a little bit with where you typically see unders pay out a little bit more often than overs. Now, Chris Godwin, obviously not just hoping on sending out a prayer that somehow he gets hurt. I do not wish injury on anyone. I am betting on this under because this is something that he's not a red zone threat. Chris Godwin is not a consistent red zone threat. He is a really good wide receiver. I mean, let's look at just last year, right? So last year he had a great year. He had over 1,000 yards. However, he only had 2 receiving touchdowns in a great year, right? Nothing wrong with the year. If he could reproduce it another year later, I think that'd be great. The Bucs would love that. And it's not like this was a weird kind of year where, hey, maybe they just didn't have a lot of passing touchdowns. Under offense coordinator Dave Canales, who has now moved on to Carolina, Baker Mayfield had a career year. He had the most passing touchdowns in his career with 28. And Chris Godwin only got 2, right? You got Mike Evans taking a lot of those touchdowns as he's just a touchdown machine on the other side. You got Cade Otton at tight end. You've got, Rachaad White out of the backfield. Chris Godwin's frankly the 4th or 5th option in the red zone for this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team. And this has kind of been proven. In the last 3 seasons, despite having over 1,000 receiving yards each season, he's only had 10 touchdowns in 3 years, right? So that's not going to get you to this number of, him needing to get to 5. So this is not really a fade on Chris Godwin. I think he can have a fine year, even though he's getting a little bit older. But you got a new offensive coordinator coming in. How's that going to affect Baker's? Again, Baker just had a career year where he had the most passing touchdowns he ever had, and Godwin only got 2. I don't see a lot of situations where Chris Godwin is getting to that 5 touchdown mark. Mike Evans is just an absolute touchdown machine. It's been well documented. So really, I love this Chris Godwin under 4.5 receiving touchdowns, even though you do have to pay the juice there at minus 135. All right, folks, we have done it. We have hit our 4 best bets for the NFC South, 3 unders and an over. I'm going to quickly do a recap, and then we're going to get out of here, folks. So I took running back Jonathan Brooks under 4.5 rushing touchdowns, minus 110. Cornerback Kool-Aid McKinstry under 1.5 interceptions at plus 110. Chris Olave over 1,025.5 receiving yards at minus 110. And then wide receiver Chris Godwin under 4.5 receiving touchdowns at minus 135. All right, this is just the beginning. Like I said, this is number one of a series where I'm going through each division, giving you my 4 best bets because it's time to cash. NFL offseason, we're getting close to real football, right? We had the Hall of Fame game last week. We are 30 days away from the first real game of football being played. Perfect time to get into fantasy and perfect time to find some value in the betting markets. All right, folks, over from IDP Plus Bets, I am the DGen Doc. And welcome, football fans, far and wide, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. More specifically, the NFL offensive props. I am your host, the DGen Docs, and this is episode number 2 in our NFL division previews. We are looking at the 4 best bets in each NFL division, and today we are talking about none other than the NFC North. That is right. We are heading up north to that frozen tundra to talk about a very competitive division, a division where you have 4 teams that could not only be vying for the division title, but, 4 serious playoff contenders. I think they got enough talent on their rosters. So it does make for quite an interesting and dynamic division there. So we are going to walk through each of my 4 best bets for this division. And without further ado, let's kick this episode off with an absolute banger. Look, I know the first episode, we were warming you up, getting you some minus 110s, throwing these out there. But time to hunt for some value, and sometimes that means going after a bit of a long shot. So I'm looking at none other than the sun god himself, Mr. Amon-Ra St. Brown, to lead the NFL in receiving yards at plus 1,100. That is right. Give me Amon-Ra at 11-1 to lead the NFL in receiving yards. So I know that when they put out this market, this is one where there's a bajillion guys listed and it seems so wide open and there could be this dark shot, whatever. But realistically, there is a select few players that can get the volume and what is needed to get to this number on a consistent basis. So, talking about what are some of these factors are, the first one is that volume and opportunity, right? You have to be on an offense where you are the primary option. You are the number 1 wide receiver in the passing game, right? The number 1 option in the passing game. So Amon-Ra St. Brown perfectly fits that situation. You have a place where, yes, you have some good running backs in Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs. You also have a good tight end in Sam Laporta. But in that wide receiver room, looking at some guys like Jameson Williams, Khalif Raymond, there's no one really going to be competing with Amon-Ra St. Brown for that number 1 receiver slot. Like, he is the clear alpha dog. He's the clear number 1 passing threat. And I know they like to run the ball, but they like to throw it plenty, especially in that play action game. You also want to have a competent quarterback, right? Jared Goff, he's no stranger to putting up massive passing numbers. 4 out of the last 6 seasons, he's gone for over 4,400 passing yards. Obviously, you need a quarterback that's going to be able to get it to you to get the numbers up there. Goff also plays behind one of the best offensive lines in football. So he's going to get the time where it's needed to kind of push the ball downfield to Amon-Ra St. Brown, allow him to rack up these yards. They also play in a dome. It never hurts being able to control some weather there, especially in a division like the NFC North, where come October, December, November, December, going up to Lambeau and things like that, if you have to do that every week, including home, that's tough for the passing game. Playing in the dome, they can kind of avoid some of those situations definitely at home, and they'll be able to make sure that they can always light it up with their electric offense. Really, for me too, he was 3rd in receiving yards last year. Like, I'm not asking for Amon-Ra St. Brown to do anything crazy or out of the normal here. He was 3rd in receiving yards and 2nd in receptions. So yeah, CeeDee Lamb and Tyreek Hill had crazy years. Are they going to be able to replicate that? Who knows? I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, it is very much within the realm of possibilities. He takes a little bit of a step forward. Him and Goff continue to click, and maybe one of those guys, they take a step back as everyone's trying to key in on them. Another piece that I like is, CeeDee Lamb, Tyreek Hill, like, that is exactly what you have to stop. The Cowboys don't have much of a running game. Tyreek Hill, Dolphins, they do have a little bit of more of a running game, but in general, like they're the kind of primary targets. With Detroit, you got a lot to worry about. And especially with the offensive line, like a lot of teams, they have to stop the run first. So that play action really leads for some great opportunities for that passing offense, specifically Amon-Ra St. Give me him to lead the NFL at 11-1. I just think that price is way, way mispriced. You have a guy who has shown he can be a consistent level, high level player. 11-1, way too high for that market. All right. Next, we are heading over to Green Bay to talk about a new member there in the backfield, and Josh Jacobs coming over from the Las Vegas Raiders. Give me his under 950.5 receiving yards there. Taking it under on a running back, not too surprising. A very demanding position that, injury risk is a thing. You're taking hits on every play, every time you get the ball, right? My main reason that there's a couple of reasons I'm fading Josh Jacobs here. The first is this is going to be a different team. We shook up the offensive line. We shook up the running back room, right? No more Aaron Jones. He's off to rival Minnesota Vikings. And, they got rid of Bakhtiari and a couple of his starters up on that offensive line. They're going to be starting a rookie, a seventh rounder at left tackle. You've got a situation for the first time in a little while where there is some unproven players on this offensive line for Green Bay. It's a situation where I'm not quite sure how this is going to play out, and it's not something I think is going to mesh right away, right? You talk about, especially offensive lines, chemistry is a huge thing. Guys being able to play together for consistency, understanding, the play calls, obviously, but the adjustments at the line of scrimmage, right? How are we making sure everybody as a unit knows how we're going to set up this blocking scheme? You lost 3 starters on the offensive line for last year. So that is something that first red flag for me. Other is this running back situation. I don't think it's going to be a situation where Josh Jacobs come in and he might be the lead guy, but I don't think he's going to be getting, 20 plus carries a game. I think that they have 2 competent backs behind him. Now, if we want to argue if A.J. Dillon is a competent running back, that's a fair argument. But the Green Bay Packers brought him back. They specifically brought him back, re-signed A.J. Dillon. They still like him. Matt LaFleur still talks highly about him and whatever. So, they obviously brought him back for a reason. It's not for him to sit on the bench. So I think they're going to use him there. They also spent a 3rd-round pick on rookie Marshawn Lloyd, who's an explosive option out of the backfield. He has a lot more explosiveness than both Jacobs and Dillon combined. So he adds a different dimension, a different threat to that offense. So I think they're going to want to get him on the field. So from a combination of, hey, you've got an unproven O-line that's, coming together, again, losing those 3 starters from last season. And then you've got a crowded running back room in not only Jacobs, but Marshawn Lloyd and A.J. Dillon. And let's be honest, Josh Jacobs is not the most efficient runner, right? He's not someone who typically is going to bust it for, 50, 80 yards a pop. He really is 3.5 yards in a cloud of dust. That's what he averaged last year. And he would need to have about 270 carries in order to get over this number. I don't see that happening. That's a lot of carries. I don't think he's going to be coming in and just automatically be this bell cow. I do think A.J. Dillon's going to get some carries. I think Marshawn Lloyd's going to get some carries. And I think they're going to struggle a bit in the running game. You have Jordan Love, and everyone wants to talk about, young quarterback, those 3 or 4 young wide receivers in Dubs, Christian Washington, Jaden Weed, Dontavius Wicks, if you want to throw Melton in there. So I think there's a chance where they become a pass-first offense because they struggle to run the ball, and they're just trying to feed the hot hand. And, it switches off from week to week, and no one is really kind of getting that 25-plus carries where Josh Jacobs would need to get over this number. So give me Josh Jacobs under 950.5 rushing yards this season. All right. We are halfway done, and you know what that means. Got to tell you about the sponsors. Pay a little bit of bills here. So first up, really exciting draft night out. If you are going to, or if you want to be going to the Fantasy Football Expo in Canton, Ohio here this weekend, right? Recording this on the 6th of August. Is it the 6th? Yep, it is the 6th of August, Tuesday. So it is this weekend is the Fantasy Football Expo. So if you're out there, join the IDP Plus crew, and they're going to be drafting on Saturday, August 10th at the Brew Kettle next to the Pro Football Hall of Fame. Drafting extravaganza. First ever IDP Plus IDP League where they're hosting, they're drafting live there. So be a part of history. I'm going to have that down in the description, the link to that. The other thing is our friends over at Trophy Smack. So it's the offseason, right? We are 30 days out from NFL kickoff. What great time. Start getting up fantasy football, start having those drafts, and of course, start finding this value in this sports betting space. But Trophy Smack, they got you handled for draft season. They go ahead and get in the game, get ahead of the game right now with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers so deep you couldn't need them all. And for the first time and for the only time, pretty sure Trophy Smack's the only one that hooks us up like this, but they've got an IDP expansion pack. Look, if you're part of this network, part of this family, you probably love real football, right? You love offense, defense, special teams. We don't just deal for the sexy offensive players, right? We don't do half the side of the ball. No, we love the entire game of football, and that means defense, and that means IDP. So head on over to Trophy Smack. That link will be in the description as well. All right, folks, let's get back to it. The back half of the show, we're going through bets 3 and 4. And we are heading up to Minnesota to talk about their rookie quarterback, J.J. McCarthy. The bet here is J.J. McCarthy to be the week 1 starting quarterback at 4-1. Now, a bit of an interesting market, I know, but here's the situation. J.J. McCarthy was the Minnesota Vikings guy in this NFL draft. You don't believe me? They traded up into the top 10 to spend a top 10 draft pick on J.J. McCarthy at a range where nobody else really wanted him, right? I mean, the question coming into the draft was, is J.J. McCarthy going to go in the first round? Like, how far is he going to fall? You know, obviously, there was a run of quarterbacks. We had, what was the 5 or 6, obviously with the Penix and Bo Nix going that not everyone had on the board. You know, but that was the question coming in. Is J.J. McCarthy worth a first-round pick? The Minnesota Vikings spent a top 10 pick, right? They traded up a spot to go get this guy. They clearly like what they see out of him. Now, he's also turned some head in training camp. You know, he's making some nice throws on the run. He's shown command of the offense. He played in a very pro-style offense at Michigan. But here's my biggest point. Who is excited to see Sam Darnold rolled out there in week 1? What Minnesota Vikings fan is going to be jacked up that Sam Darnold is your week 1 starting quarterback? This is a guy who is now on his 4th team, and the last time he really played significant snaps, really had a, anything close to a full season. He threw more interceptions than touchdowns. Sam Darnold is better at seeing ghosts than playing quarterback in the NFL. I hate to say it, but that's just where we're at right now. He has consistently proven he is not an NFL starting quarterback. The fans are going to be clamoring for J.J. McCarthy. He's already making these throws in training camp as the preseason rolls on. I think he's going to look more impressive than Sam Darnold. I think it's going to be very hard for Minnesota to say, hey, we took a top 10 draft pick. The kid looks good in training camp, but we're going to roll out Sam Darnold. Now, if you had an established quarterback, this is a different conversation. We have the kid sit. But again, they spent the draft capital on J.J. McCarthy. They clearly think he is the guy for their future. Why are we waiting for the likes of Sam Darnold to go out there? You have 2 dynamic wide receivers in Jordan Addison and Justin Jefferson. I think they roll the rookie out there. Give me McCarthy to start week 1 at plus 400. All right, folks, last bet on the board, and I'm heading over to Chicago to talk about the Bears. All right, the Bears. So, new addition as well. I seem to be picking on these new additions for these teams here, and it's DeAndre Swift. Give me the under 5.5 rushing touchdowns there with Swift. This situation where, look, DeAndre Swift, I don't know what is going on with him, but these past 3 seasons, he has gotten exactly 5 rushing touchdowns each year. So in other words, we could say that DeAndre Swift has gone under this number in 3 out of the past 3 years, right? So like that trend there. Now, really more importantly for me is the situation he walks into, okay? So Chicago Bears relied heavily on a running back committee last year. Now, we can throw Justin Fields into that mix or whatever, but so much so that not, whether it was injury or opportunity, no one dominated that backfield as far as from the running back perspective, right? There was no player that scored more than 4 rushing touchdowns, including Justin Fields, all of last season. You've got Roshan Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and DeAndre Swift. really, I think they're all capable running backs. I don't think any of them is massive tiers above the other. Roschon Johnson is a young guy who showed a lot of promise out of the University of Texas. I still think that obviously they spent the draft capital to draft him last year. Khalil Herbert was he's a pretty good running back, right? He's shown some flashes there. So I don't think this is a situation where DeAndre Swift comes in and dominates the target load or dominates the carries, right? I think this is one where it's not going to be a one-man show. It's going to be a true running back committee. And don't forget, Caleb Williams, their number one draft pick, they went out and got Rome Odunze, right? They brought in Keenan Allen. They're trying to set him up for success, make sure he can go through the air. He also likes to use his legs. So who's to say he's not going to take away a couple of those touchdowns at the goal line as well? So give me the under on DeAndre Swift, under 5.5 rush touchdowns this season at -120. Again, hard to accomplish this with a running back committee and a quarterback who likes to run. All right, folks. We got through all 4 bets. These are my 4 best bets for the NFC North. Quickly, I'm going to go through them as a bit of a recap here. So we've got Amon-Ra St. Brown to lead the NFL in receiving at 11-1. Josh Jacobs under 950.5 rush yards at -135. J.J. McCarthy to be your week 1 starter at +400. And then DeAndre Swift under 5.5 rushing touchdowns at -120. So we got a little spicier with this episode, folks. Throw in an 11-1, a 4-1. Obviously, hey, it's the offseason. It's time to live a little. But no, this is a great time to go ahead and get value from the sportsbooks, especially as we start getting up into preseason. Obviously, these numbers are going to change. So I encourage you, hey, if you agree with something, if you want to tail something, you should probably bet it now. These numbers are likely to change. I know McCarthy's number has changed recently. Even Amon-Ra St. Brown, when I was giving it out earlier in the offseason, it was 12-1. Now it's 11-1. So these numbers do change, especially for these markets where as we get closer to the season, people are starting to throw more bets and things like that. But, hey, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Again, this is a new season. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets, specifically the Offensive Props edition, the Offensive Props flavor. I am your host, the DGen Doc, and we are continuing on with our division player prop bet preview. We are looking at the 4 best player prop bets in each division. This is episode number 3, and of course, we are talking about none other than the NFC West. Hanging out to the West Coast to talk about 4 teams that do not like each other and want to make sure that each one comes on top. I think this is another division where you have, the Rams were just in the playoffs. The 49ers obviously went to the Super Bowl. The Seahawks weren't far removed from the playoffs, right? And then you have the Cardinals as kind of your up-and-coming team, a division with a lot of offensive firepower and one that comes with a lot of offensive and explosive props. If you thought last episode where we took a couple long shots, 11-1 and so on and so forth, if you thought that was getting spicy, you're going to love this one. Disclaimer, you're going to want to buckle your seatbelt for this one because we are getting up there in the prices. But don't worry. We're going to start off nice and smooth with a nice little +110. And that first bet that I'm taking, my first favorite bet for this division, the NFC West, is we're now to Arizona. And we're going to be talking about a guy in Kyler Murray. Backing a guy coming off of a pretty big injury last season. We're going to be taking his Kyler Murray over 21.5 passing touchdowns at +110. Now, talked about the injury, so let's talk about that real quick. ACL tear, not last season, the season before. It kind of was late in that 2022 season, so it bled into 2023. Came back around the midway mark, was kind of getting his feet wet, getting him under himself, looking a little bit like the Kyler that we used to know him. ACL tear, anterior cruciate ligament, major stabilizing ligament in the knee. Research really shows that year 2 is when guys finally start to feel normal again, right? Breece Hall recently came out and said he finally feels healthy year 2, which is scary to think about because how good he looked year 1. But year 1 takes some time. That normal movement, it's not only the physical aspect, but the mental aspect as well, especially at the quarterback position, such a cerebral position. So now Kyler Murray is going to have a bit more confidence in that knee, and I think he's going to be able to stand in the pocket and start throwing some darts down the field. When we talk about, this prop in particular, there's a couple factors that I really like. One, I already talked about the health aspect as far as him getting healthier. 2, I like his receiving threats. I think there was an upgrade. Trey McBride emerged, came onto the scene. I think one of the best tight ends in football right now. Obviously, a young player Really love him fantasy and the prop market. But, he emerged, so you're going to have him. And then Marvin Harrison Jr., undoubtedly the number one prospect in the draft, a guy who has had 14 touchdowns in each of the last 2 seasons at Ohio State. If he was getting that from Kyle Honda McCord, I think Kyler Murray can deliver him a nice ball or two. The other aspect here is they have a really, really bad defense. Really bad. Not only do I need him to score points as far as getting passing touchdowns, the Cardinals, the state of Arizona, needs this man to score some points because that defense is going to be really bad. They just lost edge rusher B.J. Ojulari, young player, second-year guy, one of their better edge rushers. I think he was second in their team in sacks. He's out for the season with the ACL. It's going to be a struggle for them to stop teams, especially in this division. I think Kyler Murray is going to be a situation where they're going to play him from behind. Maybe it's some garbage time touchdowns, whatever. We will take it. But I think he pops over that 21.5 number. And this isn't anything too crazy that we have to worry about for Kyler Murray. It's not like we're asking him to be Superman. When he was healthy, he was able to hit this number pretty easily. Going back to first 3 years in the league when he did play more than 13 games, he hit this number 2 out of the 3 years, right? So really, really like Kyler Murray over 21.5 passing yards. Now we're going to go from backing one quarterback to fading another. And we are heading out to Seattle to fade this quarterback. We were talking about old man Geno Smith. That is right, the 33-year-old, under 22.5 passing touchdowns at -135. Got to pay a little juice here, but I think the juice is well worth the squeeze on this one. And a couple of reasons for this. One, this is just something that Geno Smith does not do, right? So I know everyone was all built off that hype. Geno wrote back, or he wasn't writing back, or whatever the hell the case was, where in 2022, all the stars aligned and he had that great season. Well, you want to know how many times that Geno Smith has hit over in his career? He's played in the NFL in 10 seasons, and he's only hit this number just once. And that was that 2022 season where everything seemed to go right. And even in that case, he started off the year great. I understand he still made the Pro Bowl, but they really, at the tail end of that season, things started to fall off. And we kind of saw it carry over into this next season here. So not only do I think this is going to be a difficult situation for Geno Smith where he hasn't hit this number, really. Again, I've done it one time in the last 10 seasons that he's played. Now, you could argue that, hey, he hasn't really got his fair shot, this, that, whatever. But a guy who was a career backup is now getting his shot. And now he's got a new coaching regime coming in. They don't owe Geno Smith anything, right? They brought the young kid, Sam Howell, in. This could be a situation where there's kind of question marks on the Seattle roster as how this team is going to look. Obviously, they have a really good, strong wide receiver core, DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett getting a little bit up there. I do like JSN this year, but a situation where, hey, if they're struggling, what's to say the new coaching staff, hey, let's throw Sam Howell in, let's throw the new kid in, let's see what we got in Sam Howell. And then if anything, let's wait and kind of draft our quarterback in the next year's draft, right? There's no way that they're, in no right mind are they tied to Geno Smith. You also have a situation where, I've talked about this before, offensive line, there is a lack of a little bit of cohesion. They lost 2 starting linemen from last season into the offseason. I know they brought some guys in there to kind of try to shore up that offensive line, but chemistry is a huge thing. And you got offensive tackle Abraham Lucas coming back from a knee injury where he's kind of had some chronic knee issues. And we've seen in guys like Ryan Ramczyk, Ryan Jensen, guys where if you get these knee issues, they're a lot of the times they don't really go away. They're 300 plus pounds. You're carrying a lot of weight on your body and you're putting a lot of stress on your joints. So that's where I start to get concerned about these offensive linemen where they're having these chronic knee issues, bouncing in and out of the lineup. We cannot afford that there. Seattle can't afford that with Abraham Lucas. So for a multitude of reasons, guys, I am on the under Geno Smith, 22.5 passing yards. Again, paying the juice at -135. All right, folks, I'm telling you, we get in, we get out. We are quick and dirty with it, but we are halfway through. Before we move on, I got to tell you about some of the great things we got going over here at IDP Plus. First off, hey, I'm recording this on Wednesday, the 7th of August. In just a couple days, the Fantasy Football Expo is kicking off. So if you're heading out there this weekend or, hey, you want to just make a snap decision and get out there, well, make sure you head over to the Brew Kettle on Saturday, August 10th, right next to the Pro Football Hall of Fame for the first ever Draft Night Out IDP League with IDP Plus. That is right. For the first time ever, IDP Plus is hosting an IDP League. Be a part of history over there. That's Saturday, August 10th at the Brew Kettle. Go join some of my coworkers and my friends over there and have a good time. The other thing we were talking about offseason, right? Great time to find value in the betting markets. Also a great time for fantasy football. And nobody's got you covered in fantasy football like Trophy Smack. Trophy Smack, hey, they've got beautiful draft boards and it is draft season. So get ahead of the game right now with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers so deep you promise you won't use them all, no matter how deep you go, unless you're still drafting Tim Tebow. Maybe then that's the case. But the first time, Trophy Smack is offering an IDP expansion pack for all the defensive nerds like you and I. Look, if you're on this channel, you probably love real football. When I say real football, I'm not just talking about the sexy offensive players, right? Or, hey, we talk about 11 on 11 football, right? The way the game's supposed to be played. Offense, defense, special teams. We cover it all here at IDP Plus, and so do our friends over at Trophy Smack. So for both of those things, check out the description. I'm going to have links in the show description for both of those as well. All right, folks. Halftime. And we're back. All right, and we're coming back hot. All right, I've got, the biggest bet I've given out so far, and we're heading over to LA, a city that likes bright lights and being flashy. And I'm hoping that a certain wide receiver in Mr. Cooper Kupp is flashy enough to find himself in the end zone a lot this season. Give me Cooper Kupp to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns at 35-1. That is right. Plus 3,500, 35-1. Now, I know this seems like a big number, and I think it still is. However, I will say it's the offseason. These numbers change a lot. I mean, I just kind of wrote this up maybe a week ago, and the number was at 45-1. Right? So if you like a number, you want to pounce on it, right? That's the ticket I have in my pocket. 35-1, I still like it. I'm still going to give it out. But I would say, I think this is a little bit of the Puka Nacua injury news. And, most people may not understand, but what Sean McVay was basically saying with the Bursa sack, it's just a little bit of an irritation, not expected to be something serious. So I think Puka Nacua is going to come back in a couple weeks. That number is going to rise up again as more people get back in on Puka Nacua. I think this injury has a little people scared off, kind of getting to the Kupp side. I've been a big Cooper Kupp guy all offseason. So I would say, let this number creep up a little bit once Puka Nacua comes back and grab it. But hey, 35-1, I can't imagine it's going to go much lower than that. But if you want to get in your pocket now, great. But let me tell you why I'm in on it. First of all, look, it was only a couple of seasons ago 3 years ago where Cooper Kupp did this. He led the NFL in passing touchdowns with 16 on their way to a Super Bowl. Amazing season. He did it with the same quarterback, right? Him and Matthew Stafford obviously have a wonderful connection. Now, I know what you're saying. He's dealt with injuries the past 2 seasons. Absolutely. You are correct. There is no denying that. Another fact is that when healthy, Cooper Kupp is one of the best wide receivers in the entire league. There is no doubt of that, especially his route running around the red zone. Now, talking about Puka Nacua, great young player, great second-year player. But as much as Puka Nacua jumped onto the scene last year, he was not some massive red zone threat, right? Cooper Kupp played 5 less games than Puka Nacua, and Nacua only had 1 more touchdown, right? So average that out. Obviously, Kupp is expected to kind of get the larger workload in the red zone. You also have Tyler Higbee coming off ACL, MCL surgery. I don't expect him to be ready until maybe the midpoint of the season. So I think Kupp is going to be the primary target in the red zone. I know they're going to hand the ball off to Kyren Williams. I get that. But I think a healthy Cooper Kupp is one of the most dangerous things in the NFL, especially in the red zone. So listen, I'm giving it out at 35-1 today. I'm telling you, I think it's going to get back up to 40-1, 45-1. So whatever number you grab it on, I hope you join me in this fun ride because I really think Cooper Kupp is going to have a special year. All right, folks. The fourth and final bet. Another fun one here. Another wide receiver. So we went quarterback, wide receiver. And we're heading out to the Bay Area. That's right. We're talking about Deebo Samuel. A little bit of an interesting one here. 5+ rushing and 5+ receiving touchdowns at 6-1. That is plus 600 for Deebo Samuel. Listen, Deebo Samuel is simply a touchdown machine. He on the ground, through the air. I mean, it does not matter. And he's playing with a coach who knows to get the ball in Deebo's hand in creative ways. When Deebo has the ball in his hands, he's one of the hardest people to tackle in the entire NFL. And Kyle Shanahan understands, hey, I got to do it through the air and I got to do it on the ground, right? Whether you're giving Chris McCaffrey a blow or whether, it's just a trick play or whatever it is. But this is something that it sounds a little bit crazy. I know when I first saw this, I was like, really? 5-5. How often does this happen? Well, pretty often, right? In the last 3 seasons, he's done this in 2 out of the last 3 seasons. So it's not like we're asking Debo to do anything crazy. In 2021, he hit this. In 2022, he dealt with some injuries. And then in 2023, he was back on to doing this as well. So I think this is a situation where Debo knows how to get in the end zone. Again, through the air, on the ground, whatever it may be, Debo Samuel knows how to find the end zone. This is another one that can kind of change as far as it's the offseason. All these prices are going to change. It keeps floating between plus 600, plus 650. The Brandon Ayuk news is obviously something that if Brandon Ayuk does get traded, which it seems like every day becomes more and more likely, that even excels like, hey, you got to put Debo to the forefront, right? It's going to be the 3-headed monster of Kittle, Debo, and Christian McCaffrey. This is a good 49ers offense. They're going to score a lot of touchdowns. So I think for Debo to get 5 on the ground and 5 through the air is very doable. So a plus 600 or 650, depending on where you get it, when you get it, is very reasonable. Again, he's hit this in the last 2 out of the 3 years. So, folks, we're going to do a quick wrap up, a quick recap, and then I'm going to go ahead and get out of here. So, talking about my 4 favorite bets for the player prop bets for the NFC West. Head over to Arizona. We have Kyler Murray over 21.5 passing touchdowns at plus 110. We got Geno Smith under 22.5 passing touchdowns at minus 135. We've got Cooper Kupp to lead the NFL in receiving touchdowns at 35-1. Currently, again, I would wait till that pops back up to 40-45. And then Debo Samuel, 5+ rushing and 5+ receiving at a nice 6-1 to cap us off here, folks. Hey, listen, I hope you enjoyed this quick, dirty version. Hey, just telling you, we're going by division. I'm giving my 4 best bets. I'm quickly explaining why I love these bets. For more bets, fantasy football, anything you need, head on over to idpplus.com. Also, if you enjoyed this video, please like, comment, subscribe. Comment what you like to see, what you don't like to see. We're a newer channel here, as you can tell. So we're trying out new things. So if you got any suggestions for us, let us know. At the end of the day, all we're trying to do is just cash a bunch of football bets with you guys. Because cashing football bets is fun, but cashing football bets as a community. Welcome, football fans, to another edition of IDP Plus Bets. That is right, folks. We're continuing on with our NFL division previews where we're giving out our top 4 player prop bets in each division. And today we're heading on over to the NFC Beast. That is right. We're wrapping up the NFC conference, heading over to, in my humble opinion, the best division in football in the NFC East. Look, folks, I'm not hiding it. It's well documented. I am a New York Football Giants fan. But listen, I'm going to be unbiased for the sake of our wallets, all right? We're going to just give out my 4 best plays. We're going to have 1 for each team here. So, look, this is a division where the NFC East, the only division where every team in it has a Super Bowl. And these teams, frankly, do not like each other, just like the fans do not like each other, but they play each other well. And there's a lot of good players in this division. And we're going to start with one of those players over in Washington, talking about wide receiver Terry McLaurin. That is right, Scary Terry. And we might have to just rename him to Mr. Consistency, because I'm going with Terry McLaurin over 900.5 receiving yards at minus 110. This is a guy who every year in the league, he just produces. Since he came in 2019 out of the Ohio State University, he has gone over this prop 5 straight seasons. And to add on to that consistency, in his past 3 seasons, he's gone over 1,000 yards and he's played in all 17 games. The best ability is availability. Terry McLaurin has shown that he is available and that he's a consistent, productive receiver. He's also shown he's pretty much been quarterback proof. He's played with a lot of quarterbacks and not very good ones. You've had Alex Smith. You've had Taylor Heineke. You had Sam Howell. There's been a number of pretty awful quarterbacks to run through that Washington system. And now you have a rookie quarterback in Jaden Daniels where, yes, there's some risk with your rookie quarterback. But from a straight talent perspective, I mean, a Heisman winner, this might be the best quarterback that he's actually ever played with. So he's a consistent wide receiver every year. He's shown the ability to stay healthy. And now he has probably the best quarterback he's playing with. And then look at the guys around him. Who else on this team is taking away targets from Terry McLaurin? You have a situation where Jahan Dotson, as a third year, I believe, he has shown some flashes, but not shown he can be consistent at all. And then for wide receiver 3, it's still up in the air. Is it going to be Luke McCaffrey, the rookie? Is it going to be one of the veterans, kind of journeyman running around? But Terry McLaurin is the alpha dog in this wide receiver room. Even the tight end position, where people are assuming Zach Ertz at age 510, he's going to continue to produce. But Terry McLaurin is the receiving threat on his team. I think that continues. So give me his over 900.5 receiving yards there at -110. All right, this next pick, we are heading on over to the nasty city of Philadelphia, and we are going to talk about none other than Mr. Saquon Benedict Barkley. That is right, folks. The public enemy number one in New York. Now, like I said, I'll get back to being unbiased, right? But hey, the way he left the Giants and the way he's acting, I'm just saying he's not building up any good karma. So there's no surprise here. But I'm going with his under on his rushing touchdowns, under 7.5 rushing touchdowns this season. Paying some juice there at -135. I liked it when it was under 6.5 for the -110, but now it's even nicer here. Obviously, having to pay that little bit extra juice, but I think people are trying to buy in on him. A lot of people are just penciling in Saquon and expecting a couple things. They're expecting, one, that he's going to just be the Saquon Barkley that we saw immediately come out of Penn State. His rookie year, he looked amazing. There's no doubt about it. But now he's had an ACL tear and he's got some high ankle sprains. He's shown kind of difficulties with the ability to stay healthy. Really, 2022 and his rookie season were the only seasons he stayed healthy. Now, coincidentally, those were the only seasons he got close to this number, right? So he's only gone over he's only gone over really 6 touchdowns twice in his career. And it was those 2 seasons where he stayed completely healthy and everything kind of broke right for him. The other situation is they're assuming that, yes, the Giants offensive line, no doubt about it, was an awful unit last year. And the Eagles had a really good unit, one of the best in the NFL. But I think people are not quite understanding the impact that Jason Kelce had on this offensive line. I mean, we are talking about losing a career amazing player as far as probably the best center that we've seen in the past, 20, 30, maybe I know that I've ever seen, right? So Jason Kelce, it just does so much for that line, and offensive line is all about chemistry, especially it starts at that center position, who's kind of the field general for the linemen. So I think that's a big loss. They also lost Sua Opeta, a guy who had 6 starts for them last year, a guy in that interior offensive line. So I have questions about that interior offensive line. The other portion of this is he now goes to a quarterback who is the touchdown merchant of all touchdown merchants in Jalen Hurts. I mean, Jalen Hurts, whether it was through the tush push or a more traditional route, had 15 rushing touchdowns last season. 15. So, the other 2 running backs, actually every other running back on the Eagles did not get above 7, which Saquon would have to get. So I think for a number of reasons, I am fading Saquon Barkley as he heads to his new team there. So give me Saquon Benedict Barkley under 7.5 rushing touchdowns. All right, folks, before we move on, we are halfway through, 2 out of 4, halfway there through our bets. Let me tell you about my friends over at Trophy Smack. That is right, folks. Look, we're less than 3 weeks away from NFL kickoff. Can you believe it? The NFL season is almost here. Not only is it a great time to find some value in the betting markets, but it's a great time for fantasy football. And it's draft season, folks. So get ahead of the game right now with Trophy Smack's gorgeous draft boards, complete with player stickers so deep you couldn't possibly need them all. And for the first time, Trophy Smack has an IDP expansion pack for all of us defensive nerds. Look, if you're listening to this, if you're a fan of IDP Plus, you probably love all aspects of football like we do, because all aspects matter and all aspects can win you some money. So make sure you head on over to Trophy Smack and check out all the great things they have there. The link will be in the show notes, and make sure you get your board today. All right, getting back to it here. We are heading out to Dallas to talk about some Cowboys. I told you, trying with the bias thing. But I'm actually going to go pro Cowboys take here. We're going to go with tight end Jake Ferguson over 675.5 receiving yards at -110. I think this bet is a couple things. One, it is the fact that the Dallas Cowboys are entering the 2024 NFL season with Ezekiel Elliott as their RB1. This is a guy who they tossed to the side and got rid of 2 seasons ago because, he was slow and overweight and just wasn't working out for him. And now they bring him back 2 years older, and he's supposed to be the lead guy. So I don't know how that instills any confidence in this team's run game. And this is already a team that doesn't like to run the ball a lot. They were top 5 in pass attempts last season. I expect that number to almost increase this season with the loss of Tony Pollard. So, don't have a lot of trust in the run game, and I think the Cowboys are going to throw it over the yard, which means we're going to get an increase in volume and some targets there for Ferguson. And then the other thing is Dak loves him some tight end. He loves throwing to the tight end. I mean, his past 2 seasons, his second receiver behind CeeDee Lamb, of course, has been the tight end. It was Jake Ferguson last season, and then the season before it was Dalton Schultz. And then 2 years before that, Dalton Schultz was just the third leading receiver by like 50 yards. So every year Dak has had success. He has success throwing to the tight end. Jake Ferguson stepped into that role very nicely last season. He went over 700 yards last season. I see no reason why this chemistry can't continue to build with him and Dak, and he's going to be their second leading target. Look, I think Brandon Cooks is a fine player, but, he's getting up there in age. Obviously CeeDee Lamb is going to be CeeDee Lamb. CeeDee Lamb is going to get his targets and get his yards. But 675.5 yards, we're not asking for Jake Ferguson to do anything crazy. I mean, even if he just does what he did last year, he's going to be perfectly fine. So give me Jake Ferguson over 675.5 receiving yards, All right, the last one on the day. I had to end it with my New York Football Giants, and we are heading to an interesting market here. We are heading to a rookie leading receivers market as far as who is going to lead the rookies with receiving yards. And I'm going with none other than Mr. Electric himself, Malik Neighbors, a guy who is hopefully going to do a lot of good for my mental health and my wallet this season. Malik Neighbors, I really see this market, which is obviously an interesting market, as a 2-horse race. It's, really between Malik Neighbors and Marvin Harrison Jr. And the betting market kind of reflects this. Harrison Jr. is the betting favorite. He was plus 175. I think he's now plus 185. So this number has dropped. I was talking about this since it was plus 600, but now we're down to plus 330. I still like the value in it. And the reason is, Marvin Harrison Jr. is an excellent prospect. He's got a great pedigree, but I think he goes into an offense that has a little bit more competition than the situation that Malik Neighbors is going into. He's got Trey McBride, who is arguably, one of the best. He's an elite receiving prospect, right? We can discuss his blocking and some of those things, but he's definitely an elite receiving option. And I think going to be the number 1 receiving option on that team. And then you have James Conner, who's a guy who takes touches, whether it's on the ground or through the air. So they have 2 kind of established nice pieces there in Arizona. Whereas Malik Neighbors, he is already clearly the best player on this Giants offense, right? They've got a couple other, nice pieces in the wide receiver room, but I think he's better than Devin Singletary. I think he's better than Darius Slayton. I think he's better than Jalen Hyatt, Wandale Robinson. There's no one competing for the top spot with him. He is the clear alpha dog, which you don't always see as a rookie receiver, but I think the targets are going to reflect that. I think the pure volume of how much they're going to target Malik Neighbors is just going to show through, and it's going to get him to this number just by pure volume. Now, the Giants are also opening up their offense as they're taking more deep shots, down the field. So I think this also bodes well for this. But the main reason is I really do think that Malik Neighbors is going to see 10 to 15 targets a game, which it sounds crazy for a rookie, but it's also crazy that he walked on the field and is automatically the best player on that offense. So give me Malik Neighbors to lead the rookie receivers in receiving yards at plus 330. All right, folks, we did it. That is the NFC. So this was NFC East edition. We already did, obviously, the South, North, and West. So definitely check those out if you have not. We're quickly going to go through a recap, and then we're going to get on out of here. So to recap, my 4 best bets for the NFC East for the player props edition. We're going with Washington wide receiver Terry McLaurin over 900.5 receiving yards. Running back for the Philadelphia Eagles, Saquon Barkley under 7.5 rushing touchdowns at minus 135. Dallas Cowboys tight end Jake Ferguson over 675.5 receiving yards at minus 110. And finally, my boy Malik Neighbors to lead rookie wide receivers in receiving yards at plus 330. All right, folks, listen, I hope you enjoyed the show. Again, this was number 4. We're going to be moving to the AFC very, very soon. Of course, going to have in these prop bets for each division. So make sure you check them out and get excited, boys and girls. We are less than 3 weeks away from NFL kickoff. We got college football kicking off this weekend. Real football is happening. I hope you're as jacked up as I am. Otherwise, Doc is out of here.
Thank you for watching the IDP Plus YouTube network. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Be sure to tap the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload new content.